Welcome to the Think Small podcast, hypergrowth for small businesses. So, what's slowing you down?
All right, welcome back to the Think Small podcast. My guest today is Damien Weinstein from Weinstein Klein, a legal practice here in Morristown, New Jersey. So we've had lots of different guests from all over the country, and I'm very excited when there's somebody from New Jersey, and it just so happens that you're super close, right? Like we're maybe, 3 miles far from each other as we speak. So welcome to the podcast. Thanks for your time.
Awesome. Thank you for being here. I know it's early in the morning. It's about 9:40. I think we're kicking this off, but I think I told you last time I go. In a different world, we could have done this live over a beer or something like that, but happy to be here.
There is a really awesome coffee shop in the Morristown, like right by the train station. It's called Ray Soul. It's like a mom and daughter shop. They have a spot there, and they have another one in like Bergen County or something, but they own they have a partnership Colombian like roastery plantation that they ship from their own land, and it's like the coffee there is phenomenal. If you ever want to grab a cup,
we'll do that. Yeah, we're big fans of that place, and one of our attorneys here, Laura, she's Cuban by background, and she's a self-described coffee nut, and that's her favorite spot in town for sure.
Yeah, so good. So, Damien, thank you again. I appreciate your insight and sharing, your approach with small businesses. I know that we had a podcast sort of prep call a few weeks back. Why don't we start by going into a brief history of the firm, how you got your start, how you got to where you're at today?
Absolutely. So the firm is Weinstein Klein. We're right off the green here in Morristown. We started, the firm's about 7 years old. So I'm the Weinstein, my partner Brian is the Klein. We've known each other since the college days, which is pretty cool. Went to separate law schools, separate firms after law school, and always kind of had the same thing that we would reconnect usually over a drink or several, saying, one day we should just do this thing on our own. And it was always a pipe dream, and we just kind of kept saying that. I'll gloss over some of the details, but he was working at some places, I was working at some places. We weren't exactly happy, and he called me up one day and said, I'm doing this thing on my own, you should join me. And my wife and I were expecting our first at that time. So I said, what the heck, what better time to quit your stable job and start from scratch than when you have your firstborn coming into the world. So we launched in mid 2019. It was Brian's focus is on labor and employment law on the management side, meaning the employer side. I focus on corporate transactional work, a lot of everyday kind of general counsel work, commercial agreements, business advisory, and then there's a lot of M&A involved as well. We do typically about 12 to 15 or so deals per year. So it started just the two of us. Fast forward to today, it's about 25 of us. So it's grown nicely. We've added on attorneys to the labor and employment group, obviously the corporate transactional group as well. Also added in some litigation, some IP, some commercial real estate. So it's the firm has evolved. We've gone from really a true scratchy startup, I always like to say, of two guys who just happen to be practicing law under the same umbrella, so to speak, to an actual business that happens to be a law firm. And it's been a hell of a journey, a hell of a ride. And we still consider ourselves a small business and somewhat of a startup because we are. And that also happens to be the clientele that we like to serve. And in one part, and I think we were kind of getting into this last time we spoke, was because we could relate to them, right? We know what it's like to go from 3 employees to 5 employees in 1 year and what stress that puts on the organization and the issues you have to face. And we can relate to it. We can advise on it, which is kind of cool and unique, but we could also relate to it because we're going through the exact same thing.
One of the things that kind of pops into my head, and this is something I hear a lot, is with small businesses, they go into business on their own because financially it makes sense, right? Like they're like, hey, like I can go out and be my own boss. I can have a lot of freedom. I can reap the benefit of taking the risk of being my own employer. And then as you grow, you take on a second hat, right? So I'm very competent. I'm an extremely successful lawyer. I know I can do this by myself. And then you start hiring people and you're like, oh, wait, I'm an employer too, right? So you can talk to me about the transition from making yourself a job to building a business and taking on that employer role?
Yeah, it's such an incredible question. And there's so much we can talk about on that. I'll try to streamline it as much as possible, but I'll go back to my comment before, right? We were essentially two guys who, he's a lawyer, I'm a lawyer, and we just happened to be doing legal work, side by side, so to speak. And I remember, the plan was always to build a business and a firm. That was always in the back of our mind, but it's hard to do that when you first start, right? Because all you're trying to do is bring in business and then actually work the business, right? You can't think about the long-term plan. Who should we hire? Who should we do this? Who should we bring on? You're just trying to get the contract in front of you done and back to the client. That's all, right? Right? That's kind of what it is. And I remember someone saying, are you building yourself a business or are you building yourself a job? And I said, I never really thought about it that way. I'm building myself a job, right? I have my 9 to 5, which is legal work every single day. That's not really what we wanted to do long term. So what do we have to do, to your point? And it's a good one. You have to bring in people, right? You have to have people around you to support you, whether that's employees, whether that's consultants that you have on the outside, whatever it is. I always say growing a business, you just can't do it alone. You need to pay people to help you and advise you and do all these beautiful things. And that's a really tough switch to go from I'm a lawyer in my own firm, just doing my thing, to I'm now an employer, I'm a business owner. And I mentioned before, we're a little just shy over 7 years in business. That transition has been in place since about maybe a year and a half or so after we launched. We hired our first person, and it's still very much a work in progress, right? Like I've taken on more of a managing partner role right now. I do very little legal work and I run the business. That was always the plan, but it's been really hard to say, hey, Damien, remember when that contract comes in, you're not a lawyer. That's why you've hired really smart lawyers to your left and to your right who can look at that and get back to the client. Your job is to make sure that the employees are happy, business is coming in, clients are paying, right? Attorneys who, especially younger attorneys, are getting an opportunity to advance and develop. And that one attorney who just joined us is like really nervous about networking. Mentor her, talk to her, get her involved. Like that's really my job more now as an employer. And then like maybe 5% of the time, it's like, oh, there's a legal question I have to address for a client or a conversation I have to have. So it's a shift, but it's really tough because I was able to do what I was able to do and start the firm with Brian and start to bring in business by being a good attorney. It's kind of like the very low on the list of priorities of what skills I need right now. I don't even need to be a really good attorney. I hope I still am. What I need to really do is make sure we have good attorneys in the firm and that they're doing the right work. And I'm happy if I'm not even the best attorney at my own firm. That's in a way how it kind of should be as the owner and the employer, as opposed to the attorney doing the actual job.
Nice. I know that. So we talked a little bit about in the past about the capacity in which your client would need legal counsel, right?
Mm.
So I know that for me, and I'm sure that a lot of listeners have experience with using a business attorney, but can you talk through to maybe like some of the people that are listening that haven't really used a lawyer when it comes to business transaction or mergers and acquisitions? How do you fit into the puzzle, and how do you represent your client to make sure that they're either legally protected or they're getting true legal counsel? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, we always say it's kind of obvious, but if you have a business, you need a business attorney. If you have employees, you need an employment attorney. And that's very much by design that we have the practice areas that we have. That's also why I think it really works so well, right? If you're a small business, if you're an entrepreneur, 99% of your legal issues are going to be related to people, whether it's employees, 1099s, whatever, or business, right? Contracts, vendors, partners, investors, whatever it may be. And we, when that itch is there, we want to be able to scratch it, so to speak. We positioned ourselves in that small, mid-sized market for clients, right? The clients, we always say you probably need something more than a solo attorney who might be good at one thing and kind of okay at a bunch of other things. You need something bigger and more and better than that, but you don't need a major firm, right? You don't need to spend that amount of money. You don't need 30 attorneys working your matters at any given time. You need something in between right there. That's who we are, and those are the types of clients we work with, right? And so it's a really nice engagement with our clients, right? It's a very much they typically come to us with one specific issue. If it's employment, they have an employment issue. If it's a contract or an acquisition, that's the matter we're working on. And it almost seems kind of one-off, but obviously the goal is to develop and build a relationship. And those companies use us as fractional general counsel, essentially. We're lawyers, we're across the screen from you. We're a text, phone call, email away, but treat us as if we're down the hall, right? When that contract comes in, flip it by us. Maybe we just need 15, 20 minutes to say, hey, Bill, hey, Sue, took a quick look at this. This is perfectly good to sign. Thanks for running it by us. Go for it. Or, tweak this one little thing here, tweak it there, and that's fine, right? They're not going to push back on that. That's pretty standard stuff. And now you're good to go. And it's it's, that type of on-demand service and request that a lot of our clients start with. And then over time, it just becomes they don't want to make a certain decision without running it by the lawyers. They don't want to engage in a certain conversation without gut checking the lawyers. And we're here happy to support those people in that sense. It doesn't need to be overbearing. We always tell our clients, especially because they're smaller businesses, hey, you don't need us every single day. You probably don't need us every single week. And it's very likely you don't even need us every single month. And that's okay, right? Because if you don't need us, you're not going to pay for us. So there's no reason for us to bill you or invoice you. All the horror stories you hear about, I had a 2-minute call with my lawyer and I got hit with a, $800 bill or something like that. That's not how it works in our world. We wouldn't expect clients to stay with us. It's a very mutually respectful relationship of we're happy to support. These are the practice areas from which we do that. And you as a business owner, you're going to have some people issues, you're going to have some opportunities, you're going to have some hiccups and roadblocks and contracts that didn't play out the way you want. We're not going to be, looking over your shoulder, but we are here to go through that with you and help you out. And we're just a phone call, text, email, Zoom, whatever it is away.
I love that. It's truly like small business work, supporting small business. And it feels like it's a natural growth partnership, right? As you grow, as they grow, you're also growing. So you're adding that to that service, right? Can you talk to me a little bit about your near-term growth plans, right? We talked about how you got to where you're at today. If you said, all right, we've been in business 7 years, what does 7 years from now look like?
Yeah, I love it. And I love this because this is, I mentioned all the things I do other than legal work. And one of those things, as silly as it sounds, is as I think the owner of any business, law firm, pizza shop, whatever you do, it doesn't matter. One of the things that you are obligated to do is think into the future, right? Which way are we going? Are we going in the right direction? Are we going too fast? Are we going too slow? The plans for Weinstein Klein, I think Brian and I are very much aligned on this. We want to grow as consistently as we have been, continue that without losing who we are. It sounds really corny, really cliche. It sounds like it'd be like out of a Taylor Swift song or something like that. But it's true. We've built a law firm really around a very good culture, both internally and with the way we work with our clients and what they come to expect from us. Very down to earth. The typical lawyer experience, throw that out the window, please. We don't want that. That's not why we started this business, right? So we have this way of working. We're doing it now at 24 people. We were able to do it when it was just the two of us. We'll continue to grow. I think as our clients mature, we've already seen, right? Even 2-3 years ago, I wouldn't be able to tell you that we have an IP attorney, commercial real estate. We have someone who handles liquor licenses in New York for a lot of our hospitality clients. We didn't have those people and we couldn't provide those services. And then we kind of matured and grew with some of our clients and we saw that was a need they have, right? And we were always sending it out to an attorney that we knew, which was great. But we said, we want to make sure we can serve our clients and satisfy their needs. So we're picking and choosing kind of which practice areas to not only continue to bring in, but also even just to beef up what we have. The labor and employment team is incredibly busy. And I think that's just a matter of clients understanding, what they can and should be discussing with their labor and employment attorney, right? There's a lot more to having employees than I think a lot of people realize. So they've learned how to work with us and vice versa. So that's more of a need now. Corporate M&A will continue to grow, but we want to become a known name. We want to become a trusted resource for our clients. And as they grow, we can grow with them, right? There are going to be clients who outgrow us. That's perfectly okay. And to be honest with you, it's bittersweet, but that's awesome, right? Maybe they'll at some point be so successful that they do need the 150 lawyer firm, right? Good for them because they've crushed it. But we want to be able to grow with them as much as we possibly can without really sacrificing what makes us good. That hospitality mentality culture I kind of mentioned before, informality to it. We don't want it where clients, reach out to us and they don't hear back from us for 2-3 days, and they're not even going to hear from the attorney that they reached out to. They're going to hear from some paralegal secretary, whatever it may be. We don't want to become one of those shops. We want to maintain who we are and work with the clients that we like to work with.
Yeah. I don't think it sounds cliche at all. And I think that it's harder said than done sometimes, right? Because we had Eli Lilly, senior global HR leader on the podcast, which was an incredible opportunity to speak with her. But she was talking about all the mergers and acquisitions that Eli Lilly had conducted and still maintaining the Eli culture. And I was like,
Yeah.
or the Lily culture rather. And I thought the way that she described it was like, you make it sound so easy to incorporate all these companies and still maintain a cohesive culture that speaks to what you're all about, your core,
Yeah.
tenets of what the business is all about. So I know what you
Yeah.
mean. It's like we want to grow, but we want to maintain who we are and the function of what we set out to do, and which was to be a differentiator in the marketplace when it comes to law firms and how you approach them, right? Like you want that sort of true partnership. I don't want to even say white glove experience because it sounds more like we're like that legal arm, that legal, department
Yeah.
that you haven't internalized yet.
Yeah. Just to kind of take on what you were just saying there towards the end. I forget who it was. Someone once explained it to me that there are some clients we meet and they're like, good to know you. Hope we don't really have to reach out to you too much, right? They see us as a cost center. They see us as a drag on their operations, their whatever it may be. Those aren't the clients that we work with, right? And this always comes up in like, who's your ideal client, right? It's less about what they do and even where they are in their current business life cycle. It's more about how they perceive legal services. The clients who will only reach out to us if it's absolutely necessary, they're not going to be the best clients. And those are typically the clients where we'll see the contract that, is falling apart and we'll say, well, why are we seeing this now? Why didn't we see it when you were signing it 6 months ago? We didn't want to reach out to you, and it's like, it's taking us like a few $100 of our time to look at this contract and say, tweak that. And now you can't tweak it. It's too late. Now you have to fight over it. That's going to cost you a lot more money. Whereas the clients who say, I don't want to have this conversation. Like I said, I don't want to sign that contract. I don't want to make this business move without running it by Damien or someone else at his firm. Those are the types of clients that we do our best work for, right? Those are the types of relationships where we've had some clients, even though we're about 7 years old, we've had some clients that have really been with us since day one because they get it. That's what they want to do. They see the value that we add. Sure, our expertise, our time, our work product costs money, but it's more of an investment as they see it than it is a true cost. And that's a very different mindset. And those are the clients that we're able to do our best work with because they let the guard down. We get to know them, their business, and we could think 3-4 steps ahead, which is really something that makes attorneys generally, whatever practice area, very good at what they do. Is the more you know, the more you can help type of thing.
I've reached the part of the podcast where I ask you sort of the capstone question, which is with all this near-term, goals and the growth that you're expecting, in your mind, is there anything that's slowing you down?
Yeah. Yes. There's a few things that are slowing us down, and the reason why I'm able to say that so clearly is because, again, going back to my role and Brian's role as well at the firm is, our goal is to move the ball forward in terms of the business, right? And one of the ways to do that is identify the hurdles, the roadblocks, the hiccups, right? All these different things, and there's many. So in the interest of time, I think we've realized over the past 2.5 years or so how important it is to have like systems, processes, SOPs in place, both literally and theoretically. A business takes on a kind of a life of its own. And over time, you start to see the same patterns, deal with the same issues. And, this is something now we preach to our clients, which is kind of funny because it's not legal advice at all. But again, that's the business advisory role, is having these processes, systems in place. When one person's out on vacation for a week, especially in a small business like ours, it shouldn't necessarily change anything in terms of the work product, the speed, the tempo at which we work, client responsiveness, and all that. How does that happen? By making sure we have a protocol in place. When so-and-so is out on PTO, these other 3 people are going to step in and they're going to kind of divide and conquer and keep things moving. It's much easier to do that when you have processes, systems in place, literally documented types of things. I do think that helps. And then the other thing is hiring sooner, right? And hiring could mean a few different things. I'm referring to both hiring people within the firm, lawyers, non-lawyers to support us, but also vendors, right? We need to do this. And, we sat on hiring an IT vendor for too long, or a business consultant for too long, or a fractional CFO for too long. I think those are roadblocks that we've bumped into where you start to say, is it holding us back? I don't know, but it might be slowing us down a little bit. If we can address that, we can kind of leapfrog forward. And that's obviously the name of the game here, is to take those big leaps, carefully and intentionally. But you have to kind of clear out the landmines before you can do that.
All right, that makes sense to me, Damien. If somebody's listening and they're thinking, oh, I'm actually probably due to speak to a lawyer, and they're in the tri-state area or beyond, and they wanted to reach out to you, how could they get in touch with you or the firm?
Yeah, absolutely. The firm's website is weinsteinklein.com, WEINSTEINKLEIN.com. You could pull all of our contact information from there. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn, Damien Weinstein on LinkedIn. You could always message me there. We pride ourselves on being accessible, responsive. So it's again, we know all the stereotypes that exist about lawyers, including the fact that, hey, I reached out to so-and-so, it's been like 2 weeks and they had never gotten back to me. That's not going to happen at our firm. That's just not the way we work. So always happy to get in touch with people, even if it's just to talk shop. We're very giving with our time. We like to meet people. You never know where conversations lead. So if anyone wants to reach out to talk legal work or just to talk shop, what it's like being a business owner, I'm always happy to chat. Maybe over that coffee that we were mentioning in the beginning.
Yeah, absolutely. Damien, thank you for your time. It's been a real pleasure. And I hope to catch you around sometime, maybe at a networking event or something nearby where we can meet in person. It really been a pleasure.
Absolutely. Same here. I appreciate the time. Thank you.
Welcome to the Think Small podcast, hypergrowth for small businesses. So, what's slowing you down?